Hi everyone, Blinktony Blingtano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And now it's time for the darkest, most depressing, most trying monthly segment of this channel, the Why You Know Review, where I talk about a series of records that I didn't get a chance to talk about over the past month, and I wanted to address them in brief here. Here we go. 1. The new Chief Keef Sorry for the Wait mixtape. Chief Keef, Chicago trap rapper, drill rapper, Chief Sosa. Not too long ago, actually a few years ago, I reviewed his Finally Rich, which the label he was on sort of pushed through as a commercial release to sort of capitalize on the fact that he had all these hot singles at the time, like I Don't Like. But on here, there was quite a bit of filler as well, even though there were some singles on here that I thought were really good. Chief Keef didn't really show much in the way of flow or lyrics, but there were some really killer refrains on this thing, and I think the real standout star on this record to me was Young Chop, who has proven himself to be a pretty great producer as he has worked with more and more artists since the release of Finally Rich. And he is on this album as well as GGP, and together they handle the bulk of the production on this new mixtape. And keep in mind, Chief Keef has dropped a lot of stuff between the release of Finally Rich and this new mixtape over here. However, this new tape stands out for a handful of different reasons. For one, all over this project, you hear Chief Keef audibly talking about his life, his artistic trajectory, the Glory Boys, the group he's affiliated with, and a multitude of other things. Up until this point, Chief Keef has always really been standoffish and mumbly and just kind of shy in interviews. And here he's really coming forward and kind of lifting the veil and talking with his fans and I guess even his haters in a very frank way, and giving us the insight into his thought process with music and life and so on and so forth that I think people have been looking for since he broke. And I guess the other change of pace on this project is that Chief Keef seems to legitimately be trying to write some verses on this thing. His flow sometimes is really just as off. He's either dragging or he's speeding as he was on the Finally Rich tape, but they're actually like, line after line after line on this thing. And not to, compliment him too much because the lines are pretty dumbed down. I mean, there are some lines here where he says that he kicks bitches out of his bedroom or his bed because they're corny, and he goes on to say they are full of corn. I guess literally corn. And then there's one track, Himalaya, a track that I actually like, where he's delivering a series of lines where he's saying, I put the letter in word. And one that really stood out was I put the E in retarded. And what's kind of weird is why he picks certain letters to put them into words. It isn't really explained, but whatever. And of course, just like with Finally Rich, I really enjoy a lot of the production here. It's dark, it's hard-hitting, it's great trap-style production. It's super heavy, monstrous bass, the rattling hi-hats, the sharp snares. There's actually even a beat here that Chief Keef, it says that he is credited as producing, and it's one of my favorite instrumentals on here. And once again, Chief Keef does come through with some good refrains. As far as some maybe technical issues with this project, some of the mixing is pretty terrible, which sometimes sees Chief Keef's vocals just buried in the beats to the point where you can't really make out what he's saying. He does sort of still have that mumbling problem. And do keep in mind that a lot of those big singles that we heard not too long ago, Chief Keef recorded them while he was a different age. I mean, some of his biggest songs were recorded when he was a teenager, and now he's in his 20s. His voice, through age or through a multitude of other things, has deepened pretty noticeably on this project. He sounds like an entirely different artist. So in a way, there is some noticeable progression between when Chief Keef broke and this new project over here. It's not exactly winning me over. I don't exactly find Chief Keef to be an exciting voice in and of himself. I still kind of see him as more of a figurehead or kind of a poster boy for this musical movement going on in Chicago. But I can tell that there is more effort, at least from Keef, on the lyrical side of things, on the flow side of things. So, maybe over time he could break some of those assumptions. Here's to hoping. Next, we have the new Cakes the Killa EP IMF. This is something the New York rapper dropped this past Valentine's Day, and it's just a bunch of love-themed songs, a lot of heartbreak on this EP, and Cakes is rapping over production that is very different from what you might have heard on The Eulogy, as well as Hunger Pangs, assuming you are, excuse me, familiar with those projects. The instrumentals here are very atmospheric, very cloud rap-ish. It definitely takes on a different tone than a lot of his previous material. I wasn't really in love with it or anything like that, but it's nice to see him kind of expanding and just experimenting and trying out new things. There was actually one moment on Hunger Pangs where he was doing a track a lot like what resembles the themes on this new EP, and then he kind of stopped in the middle of it only to laugh and say, "Hi, you thought I was on my Drake shit?" Well, on this EP here, he actually goes just head on down that emotional road, and some of the results are good. Next, the new Jeff Bridges project, the Sleeping Tapes, something a lot of you might have seen advertised during the Super Bowl. It's a really strange, I guess, sample-based and field recording and ambient album that, according to the advertisements and what you can see on the website that represents the Sleeping Tapes, it's to, I guess, kind of help people sleep. And while, yeah, it is a pretty eclectic collection of different sounds, and there are some very beautiful, atmospheric, instrumental moments on this thing that feel very vast and I think very imaginative, I think evocative, emotionally stirring. When I listen to this thing, I just kind of see just vast landscapes, maybe sort of a dark, starry sky or something like that. However, some of the samples of either people talking or kids playing or something like that do at least kind of kill the vibe for me. If this is going to be a sleeping tape or anything like that, me personally, I've always had trouble sleeping to music. Music is just so stimulating to me. So to have it on, even just like a drone or just like a really soft, just kind of falling into the background, eventually ambient piece, it's always kind of in the forefront of my mind in some way. It becomes something to concentrate on. So sleeping to music for me is just not really ever an option, ever. However, I will give it to this tape, to this project. It is relaxing. It is a free album, and from what I understand, you can buy physical copies or digital copies of this album as well, and all of the profits actually go to charity. So if you're looking for an ambient album that you can buy that will make you feel good after you buy it, consider this. Next, the new Strange Mountain album, Glass Clouds 2, which is another ambient record, synth-based, and it's very dreamy. It's very, I want to say, smooth in its textures, and it's got some beautiful moments too, compositionally. You're just kind of hearing all these synth layers and arpeggios and chord swells on top of one another. It's just a very rubbery, just huggable record. It's just so slippery and smooth. Is that getting too suggestive? It probably is. I guess for me, my one gripe with this record is I wish it was a little more texturally diverse, but the synthesizers on this thing do sound fantastic for the most part, and if you are looking for a very simple, straightforward, very smooth and vast ambient record, do look this thing up. Next, the new A Place to Bury Strangers album. This is a New York-based noise rock and shoegaze band. They have a handful of records under their belt so far. Their first two are my favorites in their discography. They have a third out that they really kind of reeled it back in terms of the noise and the volume on the album. Their sophomore LP, Exploding Head, is one of the most compressed albums I've ever heard in my life, almost to a fault, but it makes the record so intense and so hard-hitting. Exploding Head really is a proper title for this project. But with their newest LP over here, while it's not as heavy as the band's earlier work, it certainly is more sonically diverse than their last album, which is actually really good. It seems like they're trying to do a different sonic experiment with each track, and there are some cuts here like Straight, which are actually in a lot of ways just straightforward, kind of catchy post-punk songs. However, for most of the deeper cuts here, the songwriting is just kind of okay. While I admire that A Place to Bury Strangers is experimenting and they're trying to do something different, ever since they've just kind of turned down the volume, I feel like they've lost just a touch of identity, which I feel like they're trying to find once again by just working with different sounds and trying different things. And I hope they get there. And I definitely feel like on this project here, they are closer to something interesting than they were with their last project. The new Primitive Man EP, Home is Where the Hatred Is, if you're looking for a just hard-hitting, heavy doom metal and sludge metal EP with just long, lengthy, monolithic tracks, give this thing a listen. These guys have a record out that came out, I think in 2013. Wasn't too bad, but my issue with that, along with this new EP over here, is that, you know, there's just not a lot of compositional diversity, I guess. You know, it's very redundant. It's very meditative. I guess I would like maybe even some more layers in Primitive Man's music, but really at the end of the day, that's just kind of my preference. If you're looking for some doom metal that takes a really primitive, caveman-like approach. I mean, if cavemen tried to make doom metal, I think this really would be their approach. I mean, Primitive Man, they very clearly go into these records with a certain style, with a certain level of simplicity in mind, and I think they execute it. And even if the repetition is a little incessant on this record, Primitive Man do make up for it in a sense with an incredibly massive, abrasive sound. So if you're looking for some doom, give this EP a listen. Next, the new An Autumn for Crippled Children album, The Long Goodbye. This is a black metal project I reviewed not too long ago, and when I did review it, I enjoyed the very gauzy, blissful, and kind of heavenly vibe that was coming off the music here. It was kind of shoegazy, something I also enjoyed on that new Botanist album as well, but I think that record might have done what this Autumn for Crippled Children album is doing a little bit better. But with this new record over here, that kind of gauzy, just, I guess, kaleidoscopic sound that the project's previous record was going for is just completely evaporated. And now the band, the project, so one person, is giving us something much more harsh, dark, and I think the result is just kind of all right. It seems like it's trying to be more menacing, but the kind of low fidelity, very trebly and thin, brittle recording, I think, takes away what could have been a maybe more menacing release. Just my opinion, though. If you're looking for sort of a lo-fi, underground, alternative black metal release to sort of scratch that itch, I would give this thing a try. Next, let's go into the new Suzanne Sundfor project, 10 Love Songs. Suzanne is a singer-songwriter, electro-pop and art-pop, synth-pop artist, and this new album of hers, I didn't really dig it. Her last LP, The Silicone Veil, I thought was a little eccentric, but not really edging past what a lot of Swedish, Norwegian synth pop and art pop artists have been doing since the 2000s. But with this new project over here, I feel like she reels back a little bit from the experimentation that I think could have pushed her into maybe some exciting territory, and delivers just some pretty straightforward synth pop, electro pop, art pop tracks. And the production just seems kind of dime a dozen, run of the mill, as well as her vocal delivery too. There are some standout singles, like the songs Delirious and Fade Away, but it just seems just like an average album for this genre, in my opinion. I also feel that same way to an extent about the new Torche record, Restarter. These guys are a Florida stoner rock sludge pop band who have put out some really standout records over the years for this genre, such as Harmonicraft and the In Return EP and Neanderthal. And as the band has progressed forward, they've found different ways to fuse this really heavy style of music with just pop rock and pop music in general, just making it really sweet, catchy, but also heavy and aggressive in a sense, with some kind of clean vocals. And with this new LP here, and maybe I should have saw this coming, the frontman of the band has seen to reform the group that Torche was born out of, just kind of phoenixed from the ashes from, and that was the group Floor. They dropped an album not too long ago in their reformation. And now Torche sort of seems to be echoing that return to roots with this new project over here called Restarter, and it really just feels like Torche hit the reset button and have gone back to their just heavier days, their less poppy days on this record over here. And maybe in a sense that could be a welcome idea, because now the band is working with better recordings than they used to in the past. Maybe they could do this sound that they used to do in their early days, in their Floor days, a little bit more justice with this latest incarnation of the band. But it really just kind of felt like treading water to me. Nothing really that new or exciting. A lot like that Songs for Singles compilation they dropped not too long ago. I think Torche, as long as they continue experimenting and just trying new things, they're going to be an interesting band. But if they just kind of stick to what they're most comfortable with, like on this record over here, it's just going to be a little kind of one ear and out the other for me. Next, the new Krill album, A Distant Fist, Unclenching. This is a bit of indie rock here, some garage rock, lo-fi, math rock as well, some interesting grooves on here and guitar playing as well. I think it has some really good things going for it, but it's the production that really kind of kills me on here, especially with the reverby, bouncy delay on the vocals here. And the vocals can be kind of just like wimpy, whimpery, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the delay on here really causes them to just bounce around the mix and cover up anything interesting the instrumentation is doing a lot of the time. I think what the band is doing at times can be kind of technical, but it's the kind of distance, the wetness of effects on the instrumentation that makes it all feel kind of hard to interpret and connect with. Writing-wise, performance-wise, I can tell there's some good things going on with this record. I just wouldn't have really complimented this band with this kind of recording, is all. Maybe something more straightforward, drier, more intimate. And the new Body and Thou collaborative album, You Whom I Have Always Hated. These two bands are two sludge metal bands with very distinct styles and different approaches to the style of music, some of which I have enjoyed in the past, but neither have really been putting out what I think is some of the best stuff in their discography lately. However, they did come out with a collaborative EP not too long ago. People seem to respond to that positively, and they have followed that up with an album. And both bands, their sounds are really heavy, bleak, nihilistic, and I feel like all of those characteristics are just amplified as they are collaborating together on this new collection of tracks. It's not anything too much more adventurous or risk-taking than what they did on the EP, or even what they would do separately, but they definitely complement each other. Again, in a way, it's still not really for me because I've never cared too much for the vocal approach that the Body takes on their records. Not really vibing with that, but I know there are some people who are into that, and if you're looking for a group or a collaboration that takes a kind of freakish approach to one of metal's heaviest and most destructive genres, then give this project a listen. And that is how I'm feeling on all these records. You're the best, and have a nice day. Transition. If you've given any of these albums a listen, what did you think of them? Did you love them? Hate them? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Why You Know Review, forever.